Okay, guys. Welcome again. So, a couple of people that probably don't need much introduction and their team behind them. So, we're now talking on Medics4Ukraine. We've got a panel of people who have been involved. So, Mark Hannaford, who you know as founder of WEM, and Luca who's also part of our WEM faculty, and also the team that is behind them. So they're going to talk on Medics4Ukraine, which is an initiative that was set up earlier this year in response to the unfolding humanitarian crisis that's been going on. So far, they provided 1.3 million of life-saving supplies to the Ukraine through several convoys and delivered medical supplies and training to over 250 people so far. So these guys are going to tell us all about it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you for the. I'm going to say this. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, because actually, I think in 11 years, this is the first time I've actually given a presentation. I'm quite conscious of us not pushing our own agenda, so in fact, we were hesitant to take the stage today, but actually, one of the group that were booked to be here weren't able to attend, so we've taken their slot. So it feels quite odd for me to be here presenting to you, because I do the morning stuff, but actually a full-blown presentation. This is my first time. So thank you, Lucy, for your very kind introduction. Like, I suppose, a lot of the world, we were appalled by the Ukrainian invasion, and it felt like Europe was stepping back, not into the dark ages, but certainly 40 or 50 years. And the ramifications in terms of our own energy security and food security of the wider world. It was unbelievable, and in fact still feels quite unbelievable. One of the things that we talk about at this conference quite a lot is about the professionalism of humanitarian response. So we held back for a tiny bit, although we had been previously involved with taking a paediatric with Salia. Is Salia here in the audience? She might have gone back. But with Salia Hassan taking a paediatric hospital to the border with Syria when the last children's hospital in Aleppo was bombed out of existence. So we had some experience on that side. In that particular event, we ran the security and the logistics. And then with the Myanmar crisis, we put together with Dr. Moo's online resources in both Burmese and in English for doctors there dealing with gunshot wounds after the coup. So this isn't the first time we've responded, but this, we're an organisation that provides education and sort of, academic. So this is the first time we've kind of gone on the ground, but we felt as if we should, and sitting idly still, we couldn't not respond, because given our unique network of people, both locally but also around the world, we were perfectly placed to fill a very specific niche, but quite an important niche. And with Luca, we decided that niche was to be delivering trauma supplies to the front line in Ukraine. Having felt that we needed to do something, and sitting by not doing anything wasn't an option, I promptly then disappeared to Mauritania for 2 weeks, completely offline, and left everything to Luca. So a lot of the activity and what we've achieved thus far is based on Luca's energy and commitment in that initial period. So I'm just going to run through some slides. It's not going to be death by PowerPoint, certainly, but just to sort of illustrate, hopefully this will work. There we go. This is the rolling through the stages of the conflict. And Luca sort of built around us an amazing team, some of whom are represented here, and they're going to tell their own stories as I sort of come to the end of my slides and stuff. But in some respects, we're just the figureheads. The hard work goes on with the people in the country, lots of people who aren't here, and our amazing volunteer teams that help us get the convoys there, the training teams that deliver training on the ground, some of whom you'll meet tomorrow morning in the terrorist workshop. So, we're literally just the figureheads, because there are so many other people, both based here in the UK and in Ukraine, that have been responsible for achieving what we've achieved. And it's not without risk. Fortunately, nobody was injured in this incident, but, our vehicles and the people driving our vehicles do put themselves in danger. And it's the kind of responsibility we carry, with Luca and I, when we have teams on the ground is, it's that crocodile moment. We can only control what we can control. We can give them all the information we can give them. We select great people to go out there, but actually we don't control all the elements, and some of it is beyond our control. But you kind of carry the weight of that. But it is very evident, and this is one of the things I wanted Peru to be. Peru's at the end. He's the fashionably glassed gentleman. Is actually a well-known photographer, and I wanted to document what we were doing, not necessarily what we were doing, but what was happening in Ukraine. It's quite clear from that picture. Civilians are being targeted. That is in no way a military vehicle, but it's covered by machine gun holes, and it's a conflict that is pervasive, and I think that will very much come out in the slides as we go through them. I think the other thing that's very evident to us, and I think this is what makes it slightly different with Ukraine being in Europe, it's very relatable. This is a village outside of Kiev where, it felt like we were driving through Devon for a large part of it, and then all of a sudden we arrived at the conflict, and it was just Devon, and then, to excuse a poor phrase, shit. It was just horrid. Actually, do you remember this? So behind this fuse, the wheel of a jet that's being shot down. This jet is, having been shot down, sived its way through the village, crashing into buildings and destroying people's sort of lives along the way, but landed here in this lady's house. And I say that lady's house because she was there and the house was there until this incident removed both her house and sadly her life, as well as those obviously of the pilot. And this is in a rural village outside of Kiev. It could be in the countryside in England, it could be in France, it could be anywhere else in Europe, to be honest. And these are our uncles, aunties, parents, grandparents. They're living their lives. This is, they've got their place in the country, they've got their bit of idyll, and it's taken away by, to my mind, completely and utterly senseless invasions. Especially as you go close to the conflict zone, the roads are littered with armament. And the people in this tank, probably didn't want to be here either. And I feel you can go around the other side, you see where the heat round went in, and they were people with families as well. But this is in Bircher. These are sort of holiday homes that people have saved their lives to live in, overlooking the forest and the lake. It's idyllic. People have saved and built their futures around being able to live in this way. Above these levels, actually, there are people still living in some of the remnants of the flats, because where else are they going to go? But lives destroyed. And poignant around this particular picture, the base of the houses were lots of family pets, great-looking animals, lovely dogs, but had been left behind. And it's kind of like that human kind of cultural remnants of this conflict that actually take you by surprise sometimes. Animals desperate for affection, but also clearly suffering from PTSD themselves as well. And I don't think these are distressing for you guys, but I put this in just in case for others. This is in a military hospital just outside of Lviv. This is a gentleman who's in everyday life a cook. He was, and coming from Peru might want to correct me on the story, he was out going for a pee in his back garden at night time when a missile landed in his house, killing his wife. He was also badly injured and had to tourniquet his own legs with baler twine. His chefing career is over. He was found by a patrol the next morning, but there are lots of people like him that wouldn't have been found by patrols the next morning. He was lucky that he was young and fit enough to be able to tourniquet himself to save his own life, but there are innumerable people for whom that isn't the case. And again, these are just normal people. These are not combatants. And again, a farm labourer, again working in the fields with random missile attacks. And his labouring career is certainly over. And we were concerned actually he wasn't going to make it. So We'll have to find out what his story is. But yeah, we felt compelled to act, and given that we're not an agency or an NGO or anything like that, actually there were a number of important lessons that we needed to learn, and Ukraine certainly wasn't a place that we expected to ever operate in because it's, not an expedition environment. But Luca, as I said, kind of built the original, the sort of basic foundation blocks of our initial response. So I'll hand over to Luca to.
Forgive me, I got a funny accent, and I don't tend to do this much. So, hi, I'm Luca. So just following up, there was a great introduction from Mark, so thank you very much. And it sets the scene, doesn't it? There's not just Ukraine. There is Yemen. There is Afghanistan. There are other places in the world, obviously, and we all know. But if Ukraine does feel like our backyard, right? It just feels like home in a way. I feel like the last sort of wall bastion before we get invaded ourselves. So it just felt that extra drive of trying to do something. And to be fair, because we can get by driving over there, and that was the thing that sort of like driven us. Was like, I used to drive trucks from like London to Beijing or London to Cape Town. Ukraine is just like a couple of days down the road, no problem. So we sort of like decided we can do something about this. We've done it in 2015, something similar for Syria. So it's like, it can't be that difficult, especially with the attention and the drive that there is at the moment. So in a space, whilst Mark was tanning somewhere in Mauritania and having fun, I've spent quite a lot of like sleepless nights speaking with a lot of people in Ukraine. Sal, that is not in the room, we actually started by communicating with a lot of consultants and doctors, including Kherson, whilst it was encircled, Lviv, Kyiv, Kharkiv, a lot of other places, and getting sort of very high quality interviews to try to understand what sort of injuries and what sort of help we could give. And it just confirmed that the normal combat battle care is what they needed. So they needed tourniquets, they needed blast bandages, they needed hemostatic agents, all that sort of stuff that you would use at point of injury. And so we started, like, we just get the appeal out. How can we? Actually, I answered an appeal from a guy called Lucas that was here yesterday, Polish, but I think he's gone now, who was already helping from Poland, and he sort of exhausted all his resources. He's got a training center. His training center turned into a refugee center. He already had a few hundred Ukrainian there that was training himself, young lads that wanted to go back into Ukraine to fight, and it just ran out of all resources. So it was on LinkedIn, funny enough, and I answered that call and said, I think I can help. Use some personal contacts, check him out, great guy, and he knew someone in Ukraine. And that's how it all started. Stefan, who was supposed to be here today, he couldn't, but he's here with us as much so that I talk to him still every day at the moment. And it sort of just took over from there. Mark comes back. I managed to organize enough donated supply at the time. We still had no money or anything like that. And this is just a parenthesis. Up to now, actually, World Extreme Medicine and Mark himself has footed the bill for absolutely everything that is logistics. All the donations that we received so far have all gone on to medical supplies only. Also, our trainers' expenses, everything is all paid by World Extreme Medicine. And this has gone on since February. So obviously, thank you, because it is making a difference. So yeah, we managed to put two vans together. Mark and I, obviously, were driving, and then we had a friend of mine, another paramedic down the road, that's like, well, I think I can come. I'll ask my wife. Sorry, I can't come. He's got 6 kids. Not a joke. Not a word of a lie. And then he calls me 2 hours later. He's like, I had a chat with the family. I can come. Like, great. And then someone had to drop out last minute. And I get a text. It's like, we got a friend called Peter. It's like, who is Peter? He's coming up to Manchester. He's going to drive with you. Peter is over there. He's going to introduce himself in a minute. And the 4 of us just drove down to the border with Ukraine. The plan was drop. We already had logistics supply that I set up with Stefan to get things across. We are renting vans for the ones that are looking at possibly logistics. Without logs and without logistics, someone quite famous told me this week from UK Med, you can't get anything done. You need logistics, right? So that's what I spent 2 months basically putting together, was the logistics. Got him across, and we weren't going to go in. And then Mark and I was like, and me especially, I've been speaking with these guys for weeks, if not months now. I built a relationship. They are friends, in a way. I still never met them. And I know we are in the era of we're doing everything remotely. There is people listening to us from all over the world today. But I needed to see these guys face to face. And Mark did agree. So we actually end up crossing the border, thanks to Svetlana, right there. So the whole team is here, as I said. Svetlana, you probably can introduce yourself in a minute, but from Kyiv. And she's basically been smuggling us across the border, literally, for the last 10 months now, living out of her car. And we were all in Lviv. We met Stefan and a few other guys, and I had a serendipity moment, right? I was like, all of these people didn't really know each other before we put them together. And since then, they all, with us and themselves, they've been doing other stuff of their own, working synergistically to help the people of Ukraine and just to help the cause. And if anything comes from Medics4Ukraine, I think that's already a success, okay? And I'm really, really proud of that. But it didn't stop there. And because in my head, I was like, yeah, we drive a van there, a couple of vans there, we come back. No. And things just start escalating from there. And as Lucy was saying, we're at 1.4 million, actually, pounds worth of medical supplies that have been delivered, and about 360 people have been trained. A lot of the team is here in the audience today, so it's not just us. There is a few trainers here. There's a few people that are driven on convoys. So there is a massive operation behind, and it's all volunteers. All volunteers that just want to help. None of us get paid or anything like that. They're still giving up their own time. Trainers go into Ukraine in some dodgy places sometimes to do some training, and it's all good. Is this going to play?
Should do.
Yeah. So this. So how do we know? We're sending very valuable equipment, very valuable thing out into Ukraine. How do we know that it's going to the right places? Again, technology has helped. We have to be quite careful of how we do it. But basically, this is out on the front line, not far from Kherson, a few months back. We just get photos, messages, geotag stuff. Just to be careful with that, just to know that our equipment was getting to the right place.
Hello, dear friends. We get a new helping from World Extreme Medical, and we're so very thankful for everybody who helping us. Right now, we're in Kherson region on the zero line. It's not a lot of us here because right now we remove so quickly, but we want to open those boxes and show what we get from our friends. First of all, a lot of bandages, a lot of fixings, a lot of different another stuff.
It's not medical.
Or just skip.
Yeah. So it's basically just showing what's in the trauma boxes. So just for the medicals in the room, so everyone, as I said, we focus on, initially actually, we wanted to do something similar to what we did for Syria. So we want to focus on pediatrics, as just recently the pediatric hospital in Kyiv was bombed. You probably remember the news. But it's sort of like, it just was evident that what it was needed was actually trauma care, frontline, point of injury. So we actually work with some really good friends now from Festival Medical Services, who are here in the room as well, and Reflex, who's actually got a stand upstairs. And we've designed, mainly that was driven by Nick actually here in the room, what is called the trauma box, which is the boxes that you've seen in there. And the whole idea of that is to create, it's not Afghanistan, it's not Iraq, it's not like face-to-face bullets and sort of like face-to-face warfare. It's more like shelling. They don't really see each other, you know. So to create a mini field clinic somewhere in a basement or in a bunker, wherever they might be, where the soldier or the person that's been injured can be stabilized before they get put into the back of an ambulance and driven 8 hours away, because those are the sort of distances and times of prolonged field care that they are seeing out in Ukraine at the moment. And we are at version, I don't know, Nick, but probably version 8, 9, 10. As we get feedback from the front line, we are adapting what we put in the trauma boxes. And Festival has actually been providing quite a lot of them as donations as well. So thanks to that, then we focus on providing trauma boxes and IFAKs, individual first aid kits as well. So we have provided a few thousand of them now. There is another high on the wish list request. Mainly, again, frontline and special forces, military, but there is a lot of mixing of civilians in there as well. So it just goes to help anyone that needs it, really. We also been helping a few hospitals. That is in Kyiv.
Outside of Lviv.
Outside of Lviv, sorry, that's the one outside of Lviv. With specific primary care is another big issue, okay? And at the moment, obviously, we're still quite limited. We're not an NGO, we're not getting government fundings or anything like that. So today, if you want to donate, we'll have it. Please, bring it on. But it's primary care. So there's a huge shortage of steroids, for example, and antibiotics, and a lot of other stuff. Yeah.
I think it's fair to say also the medical system in Ukraine is pretty well developed. There's a higher ratio of doctors in the Ukraine than there is in the UK. So, you know, we're assisting a system that's already pretty advanced and well supported, and proud of its system as well. And we were really fortunate with the last picture to be shown on the military hospital in Lviv. But what we came away from that, he was really happy to do that because it's about sharing the story and informing people. We talked to people, you know, couples turning up with no home because they'd just been born, but turning up at the hospital with injuries, but their life in maybe not Tesco's bags, but their lives in 2 plastic bags, and that's where they were carrying their life with them, but they were coming to the hospital because they were injured as well. So it's about doing what we can.
Yeah. So this is just I've got this one at home thanks to this photo at home thanks to Peru, and I put it on the wall. It just encompasses what it actually was for us. We would just fly out of the UK. Obviously, we drove the first time, but then we needed to maximize our time for this. You can't fly within Ukraine, as you well know. So, you know, just to get to Kiev, it takes up a day and a half from home because you got to drive. And this is Svetlana just smuggling us in the middle of the night across the border. Become quite a normal, regular thing for us over the spring and the summer. And I think I'm going to pass on to Peter actually now, because it's not just, obviously we're all medical in a way or another in this room. We're very medically focused and so on. But again, there's been a huge input from civilians in what we're doing that has helped us being as successful as we have been. At the beginning, especially at the very beginning, February, March, April, there was a huge input from like big organizations that obviously they've done an amazing job. But because of all the politics that comes with it, the huge amount of medical equipment and medications that they need to shift for weeks on end, months on end, they would just be full. There would be like big warehouses full of all of these amazing life-saving equipment that wouldn't be going anywhere. And that's where basically we found that we could be small, effective, working directly with the Ukrainian population. For example, by end of February, beginning of March, we had quite a lot of our trauma boxes and other equipment within Kherson town, even though it was completely surrounded. It was all the locals, the civilians, that were risking their lives to help their families that were left behind. So Peter, from a non-medical and non-expeditionary, not anymore anyway, awesome. Perspective, wanted to give us his perspective and point of view. So please.
Thanks for me to come up.
Yeah, whatever you want, yeah. Cool.
Thanks, Luca.
You're welcome.
They're all too modest and they're not very good at asking for money. Mark's funded, as was mentioned briefly, but I'm going to say it again, all of the administrative costs, all the logistics involved in this. So literally every pound buys something that goes in a box, and within a week's time we'll be in Kherson. I think that's quite a good thing to do, so if you are able to donate, please do. I'm nothing like the rest of you. To give you an idea how much I'm not like the rest of you, I arrived at the venue this morning 3 hours late because I was really enjoying the lie-in and the buffet breakfast at the Premier Inn. I'm not a sort of rough, tough expedition people. Like most people, you know, I work in an air-conditioned office, and I'm not used to the sort of discipline and rigor that you're all used to. And so I thought it might be useful to talk about what would motivate someone like me to get involved. And if in your own expeditions you're seeking to engage with people like me, you know, what is it that makes us give up our time to get involved, and what's it like from our perspective? So it's pure luck that I got involved in this. I think it was a Thursday or a Friday. I saw a note on Facebook forwarded by someone who's in the audience saying we need a driver on Monday morning. You know, does anyone want to do it? By pure luck, I was down to do jury service, and they hadn't called me. So I basically, you know, it's quite unusual to have a completely free week where you have no appointments, no commitments, totally empty diary. And, you know, I was wondering what to do with it. So it was just pure luck that these sort of things came. So I think I got in touch with the guys on Thursday or Friday. By Sunday, I was in a hotel in Manchester. By Monday, I was putting boxes in the back of a transit van. I think that was the low point of the whole experience, because I'm not a manual worker. I work in an office. I'm not that fit. Seeing that pile of boxes, that's a lot of boxes. And you think, what, I've got to move all of them? You know, maybe I can sort of sneak off for a cup of coffee or something. But then, you know, because that's my world. And then you have Luca, you know, piling in, you know, doing 20 to the dozen. I think, oh, whether like it or not, I've just got to join in. So, you know, from the beginning, I mean, it's sort of semi-seriously, this was a bit of a culture shock to be in a completely different world. But we packed the vans. This actually, I think, from the second convoy, but it was a similar structure. And we just started driving. And I think, again, it may not be obvious to people in this room that, you know, for many people who just work in a sort of office job, it's very rare that you get an opportunity to do something very tangible where you just do something useful and practical and it has an immediate result. So I work in a business. We're a political advisory firm, so we help companies investing in foreign countries. Anything I do, you know, might show results in 6 months or a year's time. And it won't be, you know, directly to do with me. It's very difficult to measure the impact of what you're doing because you're sitting in an office, you're talking to clients, you're attending, you know, networking events, you're trying to market yourself. It's all a little bit intangible. And so the huge reward of being given a tangible, practical task where, you know, you start picking up the box and after a couple of hours all the boxes have been moved sounds really trivial. It's incredibly satisfying to someone like me. And I think that sort of ability to, you know, as I say, motivate people who aren't from your world to give up a week's time is quite powerful if you can galvanize people like me. When I came back, I was just showing off about what I'd done on Facebook, on WhatsApp groups, on my sort of alumni groups and so on. Everyone, similar people to me, you know, have normal business jobs, were incredibly jealous. I think we got about 10 or 12 of, you know, my friends volunteering, desperate to chip in. And we had a lot more people offering money. One of my friends offered to match any donations I got from anyone else and personally gave several £1,000s. Frankly, because he was jealous of me because I'd had an adventure and he couldn't actually go and practically help, but he was determined to do something. So there's a lot of moral worth here. Of course, you know, of course we're also motivated by trying to do some good, but just the ability, as I say, to see results from immediate action is just incredibly galvanizing. It's one of the best things I've done. I'll show off about it. I hope it'll be mentioned at my funeral one day, which might be soon if I keep going with the buffet breakfasts. You know, it's really important. It was a week of my time. I was sitting driving a van. You know, in a way, it wasn't that crazy. I'm really, really proud of it, and you know, as I say, I think it's sort of become part of my identity. The other thing I should say is you meet some really good people, and again, people I perhaps wouldn't naturally meet in life. You know, Mark, Luca, Peru, and the guys, and some other people in the audience. But there's one person here I'm really happy to meet, and you won't like me saying this. I read a lot of history about the Special Operations Executive in the war, and it was extraordinarily brave men and women fighting for the resistance against Nazi Germany and France and elsewhere. And it's tempting when you read those history books to think, oh, well, you know, that's a world that's past. I'm never going to meet anyone like that. You know, that spirit and adventure and commitment and courage to drive towards danger. And sort of a little bit of a, can I use the phrase fuck you? A little bit of a fuck you attitude of I'm not letting this stand. I'm not letting the Russians get away with it. I wonder whether people like that had disappeared, and I'm not certainly not like that. And then on the border in Shemshil, I met Svetlana, who's doing exactly that. who just met us, in a sort of abandoned car warehouse and smuggled kit and people across the border, and does so again and again and again, and is continuing to do so. That's reward enough, is just to briefly say hello to Svetlana as well as everybody else. So I was really happy not to be doing my day job. I did give them some political and security advice because that is my background, and they completely ignored it. But actually, I was quite glad. I didn't really want to be playing to my strengths. I didn't really want to be doing my day job. I wanted to be doing something different. I found it extraordinarily rewarding. Obviously, I have no wish to be paid for it, and obviously that's not going to happen, and I absolutely wouldn't want it, and nor would tons of my friends, also not from my background, who just said, right, I'm clearing the diary, I'm doing it. It's incredibly powerful. I think if you can galvanize, those people we are the majority of the population, the lazy, fat, stupid ones are the majority. You're in the minority, guys. So if you can learn how to galvanize people like me, I think it can add to charitable efforts and it can add to expeditions. So I'd just like to thank the guys again. It's been a very, very meaningful week in my life, and I shall remember it forever.
Thank you, Peter. It's been an amazing journey, and we've got Pav at the front. One of the things we found fairly quick is that we needed to distribute tasks, and Pav has been amazing. He's taken all of the logistics of putting the convoys together, the vehicles with the volunteers and stuff. So we owe Pav an amazing vote of thanks, and all our volunteers. One of the things I was very conscious of is that we needed to communicate this for two reasons. One, so that we could get some fundraising and so we could use that money to buy trauma supplies, but also to give the people who didn't have a voice. Because obviously the media was there in a big way, but they were reporting in a very different way. And so I'd met Peru in my past many years ago, and Peru is one of the world's most renowned photographers. He's very understated about that and won't admit it, but an amazing photographer. Peru came with us on our initial trip and subsequent trips, and has done some amazing images. And the reason why I wanted Peru to be on this platform is because you guys, when you get fixated or impassioned by a project like this, whatever that passion might be, it's really useful to have an amazing photographer or videographer. And I'm hoping there'll be lots of questions about how you might take on your own course and utilize the different sets of skills that are sitting on this platform, because having lots of people like yourself, actually what you need is lots of people who share your vision but bring lots of different skills to the thing. So I think we've got 10 minutes for questions and stuff, so we'd like to open that up. Come on now, the first one.
Guys, if you just put your hands up, and I'll come to you.
Oh yeah, there, sorry.
Hello, we have some questions from online. So first question is, why did you need to be smuggled? Could you cross the border legally? And was it about you or the cargo that was the problem?
I'll answer that. When I say smuggle, we were not there we were not there illegally, but it felt like we were being smuggled across, mainly because there are massive queues, hours, days. Svetlana can tell you all about it over a coffee later. You can be on a queue for 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. So it just felt like, because of what we were doing, and I'd like to speak with Stefan as well later, and Nazer, because we were doing, it felt like we were getting smuggled. We would get our trauma boxes, a few of them, the rest would come later with the volunteers in the back of the 4x4s, and we just run all along these miles-long queues and tell them what we were doing, showing a few of our medical IDs, and we would just say, okay, guys, you get through, go. And a couple of times where that wouldn't work, we actually walked across the border. A couple of them you cannot walk across, and we still walked across them. So legally, we were doing the right thing, but just felt like we were doing it in a fairly dodgy way, just to get what we wanted to get done. And that's why I say smuggle. Hope that's answered the question.
Thank you.
No worries.
I was out in Ukraine with UK Med earlier this year, February, March. Just like to applaud what you're doing in terms of donations. The hospitals throughout Ukraine, the corridors are full of boxes, full of to junk. And what you're doing is you're engaging with the recipients, you're sending exactly what is needed, you're making the best use of the transport assets which you have, and that is the way forward, rather than just clearing out your theatre stock room full of everything that's out of date and useless to you. It's a much more responsible way of making donations to Ukraine, and congratulations, well done for it.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I wanted to thank Svetlana for her involvement in all this, and I was curious about her and her background. Before this, what is Svetlana's background?
I'm actually far, far away from medicine. I'm a marketing manager, but since war started, I wanted to do something, and I have my brother who was defending and a lot of friends. So basically, as you know, due to the war, we couldn't get any supplies. And the invasion was so massive, we didn't have enough, even the clothes. I was buying, I don't know, the knee pads, the sleeping bags, everything. So, and no one could deliver it. So I asked my friend for a car, because in normal life, I drive small car. But it wasn't enough, so I asked a bigger one just to get enough. And actually, I was doing it each day because a lot of requests, and it was not like from some organization. I was doing just for friends of the friends, and everyone just calling me. Like, I had a warehouse, and we have it right now in Przemysl in Poland. So basically everything was delivered to this warehouse, and then I was just delivering further. And yeah, I'm marketing, so far, far away.
But to highlight, Luca intimated how long the border crossings can take, and sometimes we would abandon the vehicle and walk across. Svetlana was going across the border 3 or 4 times a day. Each crossing could take 5 hours. And when we first met Svetlana, she was sleeping in a car and had been doing for a number of months and stuff. I offered her I tried to give her some money for some accommodation for her to go and have a nice meal and relax. And she gave it back saying, if you ever do that again, that'll be it.
True story.
Yeah, I mean, we are grateful for everyone who's helping us. So I am able to do so. So I really appreciate all your work, guys. Thank you so much. You saving lives. So you just the best.
Anyone else? There's one there.
Okay, we have another one from online, from Dimitri. He asked, what were the biggest differences in making this project happen compared to other projects, such as Syria and Myanmar projects that you may have been involved in? Was that you, Luca? Or that was you, Mark?
Driving distance, really. We could drive there. I mean, we drove to the border of Syria, but that was a considerably longer time. And I think it's just purely distance and logistics, and obviously Myanmar's too far away. So, and as we're an education organisation rather than an NGO, we do what we can, but in this instance, we were able to do something very practical, or continue to do something practical.
Peru, where can we see the photos that you've taken, and what are the social media links that we can see? And is there going to be a book of?
There's no book planned. There are some pictures upstairs on the ground floor upstairs from the trips that we've had. The last trip that I did, that was organised with the help of World Extreme Medicine and Svetlana and the crew out there, was sort of unusual, sort of an attempt to show what was going on in a different manner than just sort of straight up news photographs, which there's a bit of news fatigue for the photographs that are coming out of Ukraine at the moment. And having shot these pictures, which are kind of pseudo fashion story, which is kind of contentious because nobody would go to the Ukraine to shoot a fashion story. That's stupid. But I photographed Ukrainian people in blown out buildings in the worst sort of places, in Bucha and Hostomel and Irpin City, with handwritten sort of statements about their feelings about the war. They were more sort of portraits based on, showing the thing as it was. And they are not being received. Nobody will run the pictures. No international press will run the pictures at all. So you won't see them yet. And I think that's because there is a sort of unconscious decision amongst the news agencies to present the Ukrainian people as victims, and it's mainly focusing on Ukrainian people in front of blown up houses or with dead or injured people that they love. And so yeah, that story is waiting to come out, and you won't see it yet. But social media wise, a lot of the pictures that I've shot are on World Extreme Medicine and Medics for Ukraine, Instagram and social media. And I will be going back and doing more, and it's a privilege to photograph the great work that everyone is doing, and you know, everybody that I know wants to get involved, like Peter. You know, it's an honor to be able to do something tangible rather than just shout at the television and sort of protest one's
which you do a lot of. You do a lot of shouting at the television.
I still do that, yes. Shout Mark. But yeah, so the pictures are coming out slowly, but they're not coming out sort of as much as we wanted. In fact, the second time that we were out there, I think we touched on it, I wanted to do a story which followed the medicine going from England to the front line and photograph medics treating injured soldiers with the medicine that had been brought out and crowdfunded. But we weren't able to because the Russians blew up one of the field hospitals that we were hoping to visit. And that's how we ended up at a military hospital photographing civilians that had been injured, which felt extremely sort of profound, more maybe than soldiers who you expect to be injured professionally. Seeing injured civilians is quite shocking.
I think it's that power of the power of the individual action, and you guys are all part of the solution. So you know, we've kind of learned the bits of this to put together, and kind of knew from running conferences like this the principles of everything. But it's just deciding to take action, and then keeping, you know, as I said in this morning's welcome, you know, keeping those crocodile moments to a minimum. You are putting yourself at risk and other people at risk, but that kind of goes with the nature. The bits of this you can't control. So it's accepting there are some crocodiles out there. But just to finish off, hopefully this video will play.
Поблагодарить организацию World Extreme Medical, наших друзей Львова, Назария Шмыгаль и всех тем, кто нам помогал. Спасибо вам за то обучение, которое вы провели для наших бойцов. Спасибо вам за ту медицину, которую вы нам передали, за эти суперовские аптечки. Здесь малая часть представителей спецподразделения «Форт», остальные аптечки уже у парней дальше. Они спасают нам жизнь. И действительно мы благодарны сотрудничеству, надеемся на дальнейшее сотрудничество. Ребят, вы большие молодцы. Слава Украине!
And to highlight, every single one of them wasn't the soldier before the Russians invaded, these are the civilians. So thank you for your attention, thank you for your questions, and thank you everybody, and for all the volunteers that are part of the team in the audience. So, thank you.